Okay, so for those who didn't come for last class, we were just covering from the continuous integration part on how do we do the things, but anyway, it was just half, so we'll go through it once again, but we'll go through with the steps of how do we do a build and how do we exactly achieve them. Okay, so in that perspective, if you go to the same job, so now what we did was, this is the repository what we had. Okay, so now let's start to work as a developer and see how things will work. Okay, so there are two things which I'm going to do. First thing is we'll work as a developer or as a user, how he'll be creating a workspace and I'll be trying to modify some change and put it back to the repository. In meantime, we'll set up one continuous integration job using the same repository so that we as a user, when we try to submit some change locally and then push it here, automatically Jenkins should pick up that change from the central repository and it should to correspondingly whatever the build step that we are informing them to do. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's do that. So the first thing what we're gonna do is we'll quickly create one workspace. Okay. All right. All right. So what I'm gonna do now here is I'm going to create a clone from this repository. Okay. So let me call it as CI. Okay, I'm just calling it as CI. So here, if you see, it would have created a workspace called CI, which is nothing but a Git repository internally. But additionally, if you see, we also have some files which is related to Maven along with my project. But to be clear, what this this is a project file, some dummy project file, wherein we have some files here inside this source. So if you see, I have so many files, some Java files, all those things are pretty much there inside this particular folder called src. Okay, and now since we are going to use Maven as a build file along with this project to build it, we have put a file called pom.xml. This is a build file which is used by Maven to build a project. Okay, so you don't have to worry pretty much about what this does, because internally that's more you know, worry from a build team or a development team, wherein they have to tell what is this form.xml, how you have to be doing. So from a DevOps perspective, if you see, you would not be worrying about all those things. They'll just give you instructions saying that run this file based on this project. That will take care of doing the build. Okay, so now in that case, if you see, what is that you're going to do? Assume that you have some file. Okay, so I got a project. I downloaded it from my GitHub central repository to my local repository. Assume that we'll do some modification. Okay, since I don't want to do the modification exactly to a Java file, but some other modification. And to know that, right now, what is the latest log that we have, or that is commit ID? This is the latest commit ID that we have. That is B25C815. And that is the same thing which will be available in the central repository in the GitHub also. So now, locally, let me try to modify one file. Okay, so now if you see, I had done a previous project on September 29, so I'm putting it. So let me delete it and change the timestamp to today. So October 26th. Okay, pretty much I've done. Okay, so I'm fine. And if you say git status, okay, so it is modified. Let's quickly add it to the staging area and let me commit it. Okay. So now if you see, you have submitted, and if you check the latest change number, you would be having an additional one. And now if you see, where is it? It is present only in our current place. Okay. And now suppose if a developer wanted to test this, what is that he will do is simply going inside this folder, he should just say Maven, and he just say some options which he has to exactly compile. Okay. So for now, let me just say package. So this will ensure that it will create the jar file specific to that project. Okay, in meantime, let's go to that folder. Okay, not this. Classroom, Git, and CI. Okay, so now if you see, this is the folder that we were working on, and we just had initially all the Java files or whatever files, source code based on the project, it was inside this. And now since we have done a build, it has created a target folder, and inside that you have all the class files, and finally, it has created a jar file based on the project what you have specified in the pom.xml. Okay, so that is the build or that is the build file which will specify how to build this project and what is the output that you should keep. And now this much we have done. So that means that whatever check-in he has done is fine. Now, if the same thing, if we have to repeat it as a continuous integration, how is that we are going to do? Okay, so there are two ways that you can do. That is, either you can create one job from the scratch and you can start working on it, or what you can do is you can either create a dummy project or a slave project wherein it doesn't have any information and you pass on to it. If not, you create a Maven based project so that Jenkins automatically can pick up few things. Okay, for example, if you see this, we have already set up this, wherein here, if I have to call something, I don't have any option to call specifically Maven, right? Wherein I have to manually call everything here. But now just look at the difference if we create a new job. Just look only at this part. In a normal job, you don't have any specific commands. It just gives you a prompt wherein whatever you give the command here, it will be taken care as if you have just running it from the command prompt here. Okay, it is just equivalent to that. Now, if the same thing, if you try to create a Maven based project, then okay, so until now we created a freestyle, right? So now let me create a project called CI, and this time it will be a Maven based project. Okay, and now what I'll do is, why don't we just go ahead. Okay, so the first thing for this, whatever is required is, first I need to run this on a specific server. Okay, so we will say that we had created a group called test and we will use only that. Okay, and the second thing is, since it is a continuous integration, what is required is we need to run this job whenever there is a update or whenever there is a new commit that is happening into this repository. So in that perspective, what and how is the Jenkins going to check this? We have to inform. So the first thing what we need to tell is what is the SEM tool that it has to check. So for that, we need to give the information about where is the repository. Okay, and what is the kind of repository it is having. So in the source code management option, the first thing what we need to choose is Git, because that is what we are working currently. If there is anything other than that, you have to choose and give the options accordingly. So now the first thing is, it is the URL or where exactly you will be accessing the repository. Okay, so once you have done this, the next thing is you have to give the credentials. Since we have already used it for the previous classes, it is just coming up. If not, you have to go here and specifically give the username and password, whatever you are giving for the GitHub, so that it can access. If not, it will not allow you to access. So once it is done, it has added up. Okay. And the next thing what you need to know is we have something called as branches, wherein you have to specify on which branch based on this repository you are going to take. So for now, we are using the default branch called master, as there is no changes that we have done into it. So we'll go with the default behavior of picking up from the default branch called master based on this repository called demo.git, which is present in the GitHub. Okay, so this much has been done. Now, the next thing. So we have telling to the Jenkins that you have to check this repository whether there is a new check-in happening. Okay, now do we have to tell it, or will it automatically keep checking it frequently? No, because unless and until we don't tell it what we have to do, we just have informed that this is the repository, but we have to tell how frequently it has to check, right? So for that specifically, if you come here, you should go and pick the last option called poll SEM whenever you are working on a continuous integration job. That means there is nothing called as continuous integration job. The way that you are configuring is going to declare whether it is a continuous integration job or a normal job. But since here we are trying to do a continuous integration job, we are going to pick this option. But other than that, normally you will be using only this option called build periodically. Okay, so here you will say how frequently do you want Jenkins to go back to this particular repository what you have specified some time back, right here, this one, how frequently you want to check whether there is a new check-in that has happened or not. Okay, so here it is the same format of time what you're going to specify. So here for the demo, I'm just giving it a star star star, which means it will run every minute. Suppose if you want to check every 10 minutes, then you can simply say star 10, which means every 10 minutes of every hour of every day of every month it will be checking. So instead of that, if you want to check it for 5 minutes, it will do. So based on which time you say, it will be taking care of it. But now even if you put 5 minutes, it will be longer time for us to test. So simply I'm going to make it a star. It's similar to 1. Okay, which means it will be checking for every 1 minute against that repository. Okay, automatically it will say the same thing that you want to do it for every minute. Okay, so now we have going to tell this as for every 1 minute, go to this repository which we have mentioned above and see whether there is a new commit or check-in that has been happening. Okay, now once that much is done, now the next thing. Okay, so every 1 minute I will go and check for the repository is what Jenkins is going to do. So what if a check-in has been happening, or what if there is a commit that has happened? So what is that it has to do after that? So that is what the exact build step that it has to do. Okay, now if you see in the build step, you have something called as POM and goals, because until now, if you remember, it was just showing you one command option and it was blindly giving you some space wherein you can enter command, because that was a freestyle job. So freestyle job means you can enter anything that you want and it will run. But since it is specifically we choose it as a Maven based project, we don't have to invoke Maven. If not, you have to run the same command like how we have triggered some time back. Here, if you see, I triggered something like this, right? So instead of that, I don't have to trigger anything like that, because whatever command that I enter here, it internally assumes that I am invoking Maven. So that is the advantage. You should be using a Maven based project. Suppose if you're building your project using Maven as the build tool. Okay, so now, as I said, for Maven, it requires a file called pom.xml, which has all the configurations in which it would have been defined for this project, what you have to do and how you have to do. Okay, and like I said, that will be taken care by the build team who will be taking care of writing those pom.xml. But other than that, whoever is taking care, they will just inform you saying that how you have to run it. Okay. So now if you know, this is what you have to do. Basically, you have to run this file and run this. But if you see, we have not given the pom.xml here because by default, if you don't specify a file called pom.xml, it will try to read the file in the same directory where it is present, which means if you see here, we ran this command from the same path, right? C Adam classroom git ci, right? And since we ran this, we have a pom.xml in the same directory or folder as we are running. So by default, Maven will pick that file in the directory where you are running. So you don't have to even specify. But here, the difference is since you are not running the Maven directly, but you are calling Jenkins and Jenkins internally calling Maven. So it is required to specify where is the pom.xml that you have to specify. Okay, and then the second thing is what is that it has to do. So what exactly is the goal of this Maven which it starts to do? That is what we have to do. Wherein here, if you see, there are a lot of goals associated with Maven, wherein again the team or whichever the build team or the product team who are maintaining this, they will let you know what is the option or the goal that it has to be run. So for example, this is one of the common goal which everyone will be using, which will create the jar or var file against a product. Okay, so now you can specify this. Okay, now going back to this point here. Now, if I say some file like this, pom.xml, so what does it mean? Because logically, we need to say where exactly this pom.xml is present, right? But now for this Jenkins job, if we just say pom.xml, where is it going to find out the pom.xml? Because if you see for this repository, whatever that we have specified in the top, where is the pom.xml? The pom.xml is present in this parent directory. So the question comes here is, what will happen if a commit is happening? Okay, so I said if a commit is happening, you come here and you execute this command. So which is something similar to this, right? That is all fine. But where are these files present so that you can run this command? That is the question which you should be getting it, because you forget about this, because this is just a dummy thing which I did it in my current place. But when you do it in the production, you will not be having all these things. So that means you should have these files physically in some place. Only then you can run this command like whatever we ran here, right? So instead of running it like this, we are just going to run it through Jenkins. That is the only difference between these two options in what you have given. But logically, for both of them, you need the files physically to be present. So in that case, how do you get is what you need to understand. Okay, so try to understand this. Whenever you are working on a continuous integration job like this, that is, whenever you configure a SEM details of any of this, what Jenkins will do automatically is whenever it runs this job, it will create a workspace. If you remember where it will create the workspace, it will create the workspace in the root directory of the server where it picks up, isn't it? Are you guys clear with that first at least? What happens when you run a job? If you remember, I told you that when you run a job, it will go to the respective, didn't I tell you? It will go to the respective root directory of that server from where you are running the job. Do you guys get it or no? Or you guys forgot, or do you want me to explain it again? Yeah, so every time when you run the job, what Jenkins will do is Jenkins will go to the root directory of the respective server, and inside that what it will do, it will create a folder called what, the name of the job what you are running, and it will run everything inside. That is what I said. So logically, when you are running this command, whatever command that you are running, typically what it should do, now once you run it, you should see that you should get a folder called CI here, and inside the CI it should run all this command, correct? So in the same terms, what will happen is, since you have mentioned something about the SEM tool here, so regardless of what tool it is, what Jenkins will do is, whenever it is trying to check this, it will not only check this, it will go to the respective folder inside this corresponding workspace or the root directory, and it will create all the files similar to what you have specified in the repository. Okay, which means in terms of Git, if I have to tell you, it will try to do a clone of the repository what you have done or what you have created, which is nothing but what we try to do manually, right? Sometime back I did something called git clone, and I created a workspace manually for my usage. So in the same case, what Jenkins will do is, it will create a workspace automatically in this folder. Okay, so that we don't even have to worry about creating the workspace. So my second thing is also solved. That is, as soon as a new commit ID is obtained, Jenkins is automatically going to create a workspace inside this folder, and it is also going to dump all the latest files associated with whatever is present in the central repository of this GitHub. Okay, now once that much is done, now if you come here, now if you say pom.xml, where will that form pom.xml be present? Logically, it should be present inside here, because as soon as it creates a folder called CI, it is going to have the same directory structure like what you have. So obviously, whenever you're running inside this folder what you have here, the pom.xml will be present. So that is what in the very first class when I was explaining Jenkins, I was telling you that it will check with the relative path. So that is why you're not giving any path here, because you don't know logically from which server it will be picking and which is the path it will be running. So you don't have to specify any hard-coded path. So all you have to tell is on what level of your products directory structure it is present. So right now if you see, it is present in the parent level. So if you just say it in the parent level, Maven will be automatically running in the parent directory of the workspace what it has created for the job. So automatically it will run this command wherein it will pick up this file and it will call Maven space package and it will run. Okay, so this is what the build step it is going to do internally. Okay, so now let's try the same thing wherein I will save. Okay, so now if you see, for every 1 minute it is going to check and automatically run. But as I said, how does it know whether there is a new check-in happened for the first time? So for the very first time when you run, Jenkins will forcibly try to do a build, because only then it will have some reference, and going forward with that reference it will check here whether there is any new update obtained. If there is update obtained, it will go ahead and try to do a rebuild. If not, it will not do anything. Okay, so now if you see in the 1 minute, since it is the first time, it is trying to do it automatically so that it will try to have a reference. So now if you go inside this, you see it has created a folder called CI, and if you go inside CI, automatically it has created a clone from this repository which is present in the GitHub. So if you see, it is the same folder, same thing, everything. And logically, if you see now, it is also doing a build. So if you want to see the output, you can see it now. See, it is just similar to what we ran in the command prompt. It is trying to run the command what we ran. So it is running Maven space package and whatever that you have specified in that folder against the files what we have given. Okay, so it has almost done the build and things are fine. Now if you want to cross check, what you can do is you can just go to that particular workspace where it has created and you can cross check it is all the same thing. Now this is how continuous integration would be working, wherein we are not worried whether what things are happening, but we are just setting up a continuous integration job to ensure things are fine if a developer is trying to submit a change. Okay, now let's just wait quickly for some time and see how it is going to behave. So now if you see, currently you have done one job, and if you see this log called git polling log, it will tell you exactly what it has done. Since it was the first time it was trying to do a build, it has taken the reference from this commit ID. Okay, and now this is the commit ID what we had in the repository also. So now since both are same, it is not going to do the next build unless and until there is a new commit ID and that number is different from this number. Okay, so until then it is going to keep on polling because we have told it to keep polling every 1 minute, right? So for every 1 minute it will be polling against this particular repository, and anytime when it finds out that there is a new commit ID which is obtained, then it will go ahead with the same procedure. Okay, now I'll show you this also. Okay, now see this file. So if you see, it is still pointing to the old data. Why? Because we have not yet submitted anything from my local repository to the central repository. So it is still available only in my local repository and not in the central repository. Okay, now let's wait for some time and see how it is going to behave. Okay, right now I think it should have done. Okay, so now if you see, the next minute it almost picked it up, but see, it didn't do any build. Why? Because it clearly says that there is no new change obtained. Why? Because the last commit ID whatever we had is the same, and that is what is present in the central repository also. Now let's try to do as a real-time workout, wherein assume that there is some developer who has modified some change. That is what we have done. Now if he tries to push this change from his local repository to the central repository, then as per our procedure, automatically our Jenkins job should start the build by itself, right? So now what we'll do is we'll just say git push. Okay, so now I have pushed the change, right? So if you see, this is the latest commit ID, and now if you go and refresh this here, you see it got changed from the B whatever number it was to the C whatever latest commit ID. And now the next 1 minute, whenever Jenkins is going to complete, it is automatically going to take the new change what we have specified. Okay, it's just waiting for some time to. There you go. It has picked up, and now if you see the polling log, it is not yet updated. Okay, so logically if you see, it has taken the build and it is running. It is because we have submitted a new change number, and if you see what is the new change number, this is the new commit ID what we have submitted, right? So it has found that new commit ID and it is running based on that the build, and it has completed. So now you just go and refer, you see it would have got. And it is not only this, every time Jenkins tries to pick up a new commit ID, it will also update this workspace accordingly with the new changes what it has found in the repository. So if you remember, what was the change we did? We updated this file called readme, right? So if you see the latest, see that September 29th is being replaced with October 26th. That is the latest change what we did. So automatically it will update the workspace also, and with respect to what updates that you have done in the workspace, it will be doing the build correspondingly in the same directory. Getting it? So this is what in reality continuous integration will look. So as soon as when some developer submits a change, and when it goes to the central repository or to the whatever repository that you are pointing through your Jenkins job, and that regular interval of time where you have specified, it will be polling for the data in this repository wherever you have specified. So whenever it finds a new commit that it has been picked up, then automatically it will proceed with the build step that whatever we have specified. So one example what we have given now is we have just given as a Maven file. So if not Maven, we could have done anything other than that. It depends on the project team on what they want to do. Is suppose if it is not Maven, if it is Ant, then you can set up Ant. If not, if they just want you to run some shell script, you will run it. But remember, whatever that you run, it will be running against this directory where it has created the workspace for us. Okay, are you getting it? What about others? Surinchi, so Wasim, Anoop, any doubts? Nagesh?
Sorry, sir, I was late today. So I have a question, so many. So I have to watch the video once more. So after that, I will ask you. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing what we did. I'm just continuing it with just one more step of doing the build. Other than that, that's pretty much what we did yesterday. So if you see, that's what. So it's not just continuous integration in the sense to run it, but whenever you do some modifications, it should automatically take the change and do. But now if you see, if we don't submit any new check-in to the repository, it will not do a build. It will be just polling every 1 minute. It is 444. Sorry, 744. See, every 1 minute it keeps polling the data, but it will not do anything. Why? Because whatever the commit ID which Jenkins has picked up last time is the latest what it is available in the repository. So that is why there is nothing to do. So it will not take any action.
Then why we use a Maven?
Maven is a build tool.
Okay.
It is used for building projects. There are so many build tools like this. It depends on what kind of project that you'll be working on. For Java based, they might use something like Ant or Maven. If it is C or C++ based projects, then they will use make files. So there's some separate system called build system specifically for that. So that is more into
Okay.
the build management, which the product team will take care.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Any other doubts on this?
So like if we wanna try doing it, in
Mhm.
that case we'll have to build a Maven project first. And if the same
Uh,
thing I need to try.
it's not exactly Maven. I mean, see, it's just for the demo, just to show exactly that you should have a feel of doing a build, I said. So for your practice, you can create a repository. You can just keep some dummy files. You don't even have to do anything. Okay. So once you come here,
Right.
you just say instead of Maven, you create a normal project. That is what I said. So the first thing, if you see yesterday, we created a simple project, the same thing, wherein I didn't create a Maven based project. I created a freestyle project. So in that, what we did was I just gave some echo statement. That's it. So it will still do. So whenever it finds out a check-in has been happened to whatever repository you have done, it will just come here and execute the command what you have specified. So if it is a Maven based project, it will run the Maven commands, or if it is simply a normal commands or whatever script that you want to run, it will run based on that. So it doesn't matter what exactly you are trying to run.
Yeah. So builds basically happens on top of the code we have, right? Like if we have an Eclipse project or something, then on top of it we build it, and that's what Maven or Ant does.
Exactly. So you will be having some kind of source
Okay.
code based on your project. So that's what I'm saying. So it might be a .NET based project, C based project, Java based project, whatever it is. So the build tools will vary based on that. But currently, if you see, many of the projects right now are web based or e-commerce based. So in that case, it's all based on Java itself. So that is why Maven is one of the tool which is being currently used by everyone. But other than that, if you have some pretty legacy code which is running from 5 to 6 years or 10 years, then it will be make files which they'll be using. So it that would vary on what you will be calling. But other than that, currently the build tools what people use is Maven, because Java is the popular tool for coding.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So this build basically is done by the build team, and we already get it built, right? I mean, this Maven project we already have in the repository.
Yeah, see, the point here is, as I said, continuous integration is used to ensure if there is something, I mean, which is causing a problem, because, like I said, developer would be submitting his change. Now, how will we know immediately if there is a problem that is happening or not? So now, if you keep running it like this, now as soon as the developer submits, you will be running a job, right? And when this job fails,
Right.
you will
Right.
know immediately saying that, okay, now the job failed. Now, if you know the job failed, why did the job fail, which was the commit ID for which it failed, you automatically know that this is the commit ID for which it failed. Now, if you just go and try to get the information from that, why did it fail because of this commit ID? And you will get all the information
Yeah.
saying that who submitted it. Okay, this is the guy who submitted, this is the email ID, we should get him, and we will report it to the development team saying that, look, the code is failing because of this, and you have to do. Okay, so this is what the work would be. Because when you go as a DevOps engineer, it is just one part of the work. That is what I'm trying to tell you from the beginning. Jenkins is not just used only for this. The main intention for Jenkins was to create something like this, but it was so popular, or it got so popular, wherein we started using it for various other purposes also. So that is what we were trying to see from all the classes, wherein we have so many other options. So you can choose it as to be a framework for your process. So what is that process? That is up to us. So if you're a developer, you can use it to do just a normal build like this. So rather than running the command manually, what you can do is you can set up the job, manually hard code everything. So instead of opening up a command prompt and entering, I can just come here and click one button, and that will do the build. Take a QA. Now, if he wants to run a
Yeah.
test suite, he has to connect to some web page and do. Instead of that, you just refer all to the things in this job, and from sitting at one place, you can just click on this button, and this will do the build rather than you connecting to that. So that is what the beauty here with Jenkins, wherein it acts as a framework wherein you connect multiple things what you need based on your requirement, and you create the process.
Right.
Any other questions? Hello. Okay. All right, fine. So this is pretty much from the jobs what we can do. But as I said, the usage is limitless. It's not like this is the only thing we can do. Pretty much we can do many more things that I'll explain you slowly in a little more time. But now, in addition, what you need to know is there are certain dependency concepts. So when I say dependencies, so just like in the projects, if you have worked, one component might be dependent on other components, right? Or we would say something like, I want to do this step only after the other step is completed. Or we would say, do this before this, something like that. So we could have some kind of dependencies. So if you want to have those kind of dependencies in Jenkins, is it possible? If a question comes, yes, we can have dependencies. So in order to that, we have to understand few concepts here is we call in Jenkins two kinds of dependencies. So these are called as upstream and downstream. So when you refer to that as upstream and downstream, it is nothing but it is just a usage how to do. Okay, to just explain. So now, as we know, everything is driven based on jobs. Okay, so the initial configuration is with respect to the global changes and the environment variables what you put, and then the node configurations. But other than that, it's all about your job, how you specify. Now, assume that you have one job here, okay, and you call it as A. Now, suppose if you have one more job called B. Okay, now suppose say that this B is dependent on A, which means in order for B to trigger, A should have completed. So if this is some kind of scenario or the dependency you have, then there are two ways that you can get this build for this job B. Okay, or you can get the job B run in two ways. So the first thing what you can do is you can trigger the job B whenever A completes its run, which means after A completes its execution, you can ask A to trigger B. Okay, so this kind of triggering or this kind of dependency where you trigger one job at the completion of another job is called as downstream. Okay, as the name indicates, down means end, right? So once you complete a job at the end, if it calls another job, then it is called as downstream. Okay, so let's try to do the same example and we'll understand this. Try to remember downstream means as soon as a job completes its execution, it will be calling another job. So at the end, that is what we call it as down, one after the other. So now first it should execute A and then it should execute B. And when it will execute B, only when it completes A. Okay, so in the same way, let's try to simply create one job and see. For example, let me say it as project A itself. Okay, and fine. I'll just simply create one job. I'll say test. And now don't worry about all those things because it's for the demo. I'm just going to keep it simple. Now I'll just execute it. Okay, so I'll just say here, hello. I'm in the parent job. Okay. Okay, now we have one project called project A. Now in the same way, let us create one more and let's call it as project B. And this is also going to be a, okay. And even simply, I will say where you want to run this. Okay. And here I will give the build step as hello, I am in child project. Okay, fine. So now you have two separate projects. So now if you see, we have not triggered even one time for both this project. So automatically now, how do you set up a dependency between these two is the question. That is, we are trying to set up a dependency called downstream, right? When you say downstream, from where to where? Downstream from project A to project B. That means at the end or at the completion of project A, we should be triggering project B. That is what our aim is. So in that case, let's go to the project A configuration page. And now here, if you come in the build triggers, if you see the first option, what you see, build after other projects are built, right? If you just go ahead and click this, then, oh, sorry. That's my mistake. Not that, that's for the other one. Excuse me. Now, the aim what we are trying to do is a downstream in the sense, once we complete the execution of this job A, we should be going ahead with the project B. So in that case, we have completed everything here, right? Now, if you go to the last step called post build actions, until now we were using until only the build, because our aim was to do some step and that was getting ended only until build. Okay, so now our interest is that after completion of this job, whatever we have done, we have to invoke another job. So in that case, if you come to the post build action, you will see build other projects. Okay, so here you can just choose this option and click and say what is the job that you want to run after that. So now if you say, you can select project B. And is it the only one job that you want to do? No. Basically, you can choose multiple jobs which you want to trigger based on our interest. Okay, so now what we'll do is we will quickly set this up. Okay, now when you're setting this up, what is important to know is we have not told to Jenkins on what is the scenario that you want to trigger, because in Jenkins it gives us options wherein it is not blindly going to trigger every time it is going to run this job. Okay, wherein it gives us option to just clearly say whether you need to trigger the job B only when the job A has successfully completed, or whether it has been failed. So based on those situations, you have an advantage of picking it up. Okay, now why do we need this is exactly the reason that these kind of dependency jobs would be run based on some scenario, right? Suppose if you want to run some step or some command or some kind of process after execution of a job, why is that you want to do it separately? You can just add the same command line or whatever here itself and you can run it, right? That is possible, but we want to run it only on certain scenarios based on some result of this job A or job B. Suppose if you want to run some script which is going to run only after the completion of job A successfully, then you choose the option saying that it is stable. Suppose if you want to run something only when this job fails, then you can say it is as fails. So like that, you have an option to choose when exactly you want the dependency job to be run, wherein based on that, whatever that dependency job or the job project B, whatever we are going to specify, you can give some commands or scripts based on what you're going to do. Okay, so now in this case, if I just say it is going to be stable, which means only when this job A completes it successfully, only then it will be triggering the job B. If not, it will not be triggering the job B. Okay, so I have saved. So now just quickly, let's go back and see. So if you see project B, we have not triggered anything until now, correct? Okay, now if you try to run the project A, so there's one way you can write quickly from here also. Okay, so since we have not scheduled when it has to run, right? Because if not, it will be running it always. So we can do it on a demand basis. Whenever we click, it will do a job. So if you want, you can do that way also. So just now we clicked and it just built. So let's go and see what it has done. So clearly, if you see, first thing it has done is it has completed its execution. And after that, if you see, it has triggered something called project B. Okay. Now, if you want to go to the project B, you can go there also, or just simply click here and it will be taking back. Now, if you see, the project B has also been built. And how it was built? It has been built by an downstream project wherein project A has been called this project B and it has executed whatever steps that you have given. So these kind of scenarios will be used whenever, say, one example I can give you is, say if you're running your continuous integration job, okay, what if the build fails? You might have to notify to some users, or you might have to take some action against it, wherein you have to bisect and try to find out what was the culprit commit ID and who exactly did it. You have to take some action against it, all those things. So in those scenarios, you want to do it only if a build fails and not always. So in that case, what you can do is, in the downstream or in the project A, you can simply say that only when it is failing. So in that case, whenever the project A or the job A runs and it fails, it will automatically trigger this project B, and whatever that you have specified here, it will get executed. Getting it?
Yeah, Adam, I have one doubt.
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, please go
Yeah, I
ahead.
have one doubt. Yeah, if job B contains some parameters, we have to pass some parameter for job B. Job B is the downstream job, right? Yeah, we have to pass some parameters to downstream job. How to do that?
You cannot pass. Like I said, if you have parameters, then you should always pass some option. That is when I said you can use something like file parameters, wherein you can store some options and it can pick up automatically. So it is a common situation when you have parameters. Obviously, Jenkins will request the user to input some data. So you cannot automate it fully. So one simple way of automating it is you can pass it as a file parameter and store all the parameters to the file, and Jenkins can read specifically, like when you set up this job, it can read the parameters from that file and it can run. If not, if you don't specify that, then logically it will hung there, hung in the sense it will just be waiting until some users input some data and then proceed. If not, it will not work. Getting it?
Yep.
Okay. So in the same case, now we were seeing from downstream, right? That means after execution of one job, this job should come. Now, there might be some scenario where, yeah, thank you. There might be some scenario wherein when you have a job B, why is that you should always run this only after A completes? What if you want to run B directly, wherein it can have a dependency? It can still happen, right? Which means now every time you're running A, you can run it. Okay, that is fine. But what if you want to rebuild the project B itself directly? Wherein it still has a dependency to check for A, but that doesn't mean that A should run every time in order to be run, right? So in those cases, this kind of downstream projects will not suit it, right? So in that case, what you can do is you can go with the opposite of that, that is called as upstream. So as the name indicates, upstream means before executing a job, check for a dependency of another job and then use it. So to be clear, so if you see this, this was a downstream, right? Wherein what you did, after the completion of one job, you triggered another job. And the same thing when you say upstream, upstream means what? Up beginning. So if you specify upstream like this, before it proceeds executing a job, it will check for a dependency job, and in case if that corresponding job, whatever you have specified, is on the right state as you had requested, then it will just proceed with executing that current job what you're running. So in that case, it doesn't have to run this other job at all. So this way of checking the dependency before executing of a job is called as upstream. Okay, so if I take the same scenario and if I set the upstream job to B, that is, if I set B as an upstream project for A, then whenever you're trying to run B, the first thing it will check, okay, B has a dependency of A. Then first thing what I have to do is, let me go to A and check whether A is stable or not stable based on what you have defined. So based on that, if it is stable or unstable, correspondingly it will go and it will proceed with the execution of B. Suppose if you say check whether A is stable and only proceed, so it will go check if A is stable, yeah, that means then I can use something from it, that is up to us how to use, and then it will come and then proceed with the build of B. Suppose if you say A has to be stable, and suppose if A is not stable, then B will not run. So it will just go and check if something is happening. Okay, I think it's failing, so I'm not supposed to proceed, because in order to proceed for B, A should always be stable. So it will wait until A gets stable. So this kind of dependency wherein you first check whether the job is stable or unstable and then proceed is called as upstream. Okay, and now for the same project B, if you go here and now comes to this place where in the build triggers, if you see this, build after other projects are built. Okay, and if you choose this option, and now if you say project A, and all you have to say is what options do you want. Like I said, do you want to check whether project A is stable or not, project B is stable or not, or based on that, whatever dependency that you're saying, based on that, whatever job that you're trying to run will execute. So now if you go ahead and build this project B, it will be running, wherein if you go to project A, it would have not triggered, because you're not actually going to trigger A at all. You're just referring from B to check whether A is stable or not. If it is stable, and proceed with executing it. So how it has to execute, what it has to do, all those things, it's up to us on defining the process, wherein here we are just trying to see what is the kind of dependency that we can have and how we can do. So try to understand the two kinds of dependencies are, one thing is downstream, and to keep it in mind always, or to remember, down means at the bottom, right? So you can think in that way. So what do you mean by the bottom? At the end. So when you are trying to trigger another job at the end of completion of a job, then it is called as downstream. And the same thing, if you're checking for another job in the beginning or before even starting, then it is called as upstream. Is that clear? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, no.
Yes. So actually, I was asking that if we have another dependency on, if we have another project like this project C, if
Hmm.
this is dependent on A and B both,
Hmm.
then we will check the both project and we will mention it on this line. There was a line was we wrote it. So there we have to separate by the comma, na?
Hmm.
Both projects.
Yeah,
We
you
will
can say
mention the
that.
all projects, no?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Multiple.
Suppose if you want multiple,
Yes.
you can go to the project B and
Yes.
Here, if project B say that it is dependent on something other than this also, then you can say like this.
Hmm.
Instead of assume that this was C, then you can say like this. So wherein it will try to check for both. So only if both of them are stable, then it will proceed with completion of this job B. If not, it will not do. So it depends on that. So it works on a and condition.
Okay.
Yeah.